Okay, Perl branding and messaging. So the slides in this session are based on an independent view of Perl from the internet's perspective. So I hope everyone receives everything constructively that we have to say here. This isn't necessarily what I'm saying, this is my opinion. This is the view of an outsider when they approach our community and network and start to look around. So this is the perspective that this is from. Please make notes of any questions, and once I've gone through the slides, we can discuss people's views. And what I'm interested in is given this, what is it we need to do? So I'm very interested in a conversation about what can we do about this. There's a lot of slides. I'll go through quite quickly because we don't need to pick through all the details from the slides, but you can download the slides afterwards and then have access to the full research. Is this a job for me? No. And I'm also not a marketing professional. But that shouldn't matter because, again, this is from the perception of someone from the outside. And as the president of Perl Foundation, it matters to me that we solve some of these challenges, problems, and make things better. So what I'm trying to do, what I'm working on here, is help get the marketing process working properly, get the team together, get the right people engaged, and then help them do the things that they need to do and make it sustainable. It's really important that this isn't just about today. It's important that what we set up then continues to operate and continues to improve. The team, so Mark Keating, I'm sure everyone, almost everyone will know Mark already, and he's been involved with Perl marketing for quite some time. Jason Crome and Nigel Hamilton have recently joined the marketing effort. Nick Evans is a subcontractor who's helping out the Perl Foundation with things like administration and some of our marketing reviews. There is a page on the Perl Foundation website, Who's Who, which has a list of marketing people which is out of date, and that's one of the things, one of the details, the kind of thing that we need to address. There's a content warning, so nothing offensive, but don't be offended don't be upset if I put your site up there and there's some comments about that. This is not meant to be personal. This is a helicopter view of what people would find when they start looking into Perl. Okay, so the first impressions. Perl logos, there are different logos. I understand why there's different logos. I've seen that develop, but the fact is, from an outsider's perspective, why is there a camel, an onion, and a raptor? And of course, lots of different sites, which we'll get into. The feel is it doesn't feel like a cohesive community. So let's quickly go through some of the sites. Perl.com is a good place to start. If you look for Perl, this is where you end up with. So it's a blog news site, lots of articles, looks credible. Doesn't tell you necessarily what Perl is or why Perl. So you have to dig around a little bit more. The camel logo, Perl.com. Perl.org, and I think it's possible for a newcomer to not necessarily notice the difference. So you think, oh, I went to Perl.com and it looks different now. So there's potentially some brand conflict between the two. There's a stronger message around on the About page. Talks about Raku, also Perl 6. So a few links. It's important there's a few comments here about which sites link to other sites as well. But we have another look there for Perl.org, Perl Jobs. Now I'm going to start speeding up because I think a lot of you are familiar with these. The imagery and branding of Perl Jobs is different again. Perlmongers, this does say what the site is for, but it doesn't tell you much about Perl. The perception is that it looks credible. Use the camel logo. Perl Monks. The first comment was the monastery font. Wasn't clear what the site was, and some references to biblical language. And there seems to be some mixed messages there. Comments about looks outdated, and the monastery gates not consistent. So there's the Perl Monks. Perl Doc. I missed the narrative on the Perl doc. There we go. Perl doc uses Onion, similar to Perl.org. Note as an official site, nothing else says that. And there's links to CPAN, but again, branding not mirrored. So we've got another view there. Perl Foundation, yet another brand. Use of the Onion logo. Doesn't tell you what Perl or Raku are. And there's some pages that are quite out of date and older documents. CPAN. And the question of the user, well, what's the difference between CPAN and Perl.org? So I think almost everyone on the inside would know that, but from the outside, it's not obvious. So there's another look. Meta CPAN. Another look again. CPAN ratings. Now someone's commented, well, that's old-fashioned. It's not used anymore. But how would a researcher, how would a visitor know that? It wasn't obvious. Enlightened Perl. And this is here, not because I'm suggesting it's a Perl software site. The fact is that when you look for Perl, you find Enlightened Perl, and again, looks different again. There was a couple of additions, late additions to this list, because a couple of people said, oh, what about Modulicious? You need to put that in there. That looks different again. But with Modulicious, it wasn't found. When you look for Perl or Perl software, Perl languages, it wasn't easily found. And the same for Catalyst. It didn't come up in those particular searches. Now, of course, you could have searched for frameworks and other things. Someone who was informed would have known that, but it wasn't obvious for someone exploring Perl to find out about these things. So they're the sites. Brief review of search engines with a few search terms. And again, I won't go through all the details because you can, if you imagine already, there's quite a lot of information there. The first comment, sites not written with SEO in mind. Perl Foundation doesn't appear, and similar between Google and Bing, and Yahoo, slightly different. So if you look for Perl, you get ads for tutorials, coders, and of course the information there from, I guess that's Wikipedia. Training sites, stories like, is Perl going extinct? So you know that's still quite high up in the rankings there. And then Raku, after page 5, you get Raku. Obviously, you search for Perl, you'll find Raku after 5 pages. If you look for Perl programming language, similar type of response. Geeks for Geeks, I'm not sure what that is, effective Perl. So we've still got lots of different things with Perl in the title, quite broad, but they're around learning Perl. Very similar again. And some old out-of-date blog articles come through there. Similar again. So where we end up with is some recommendations. So for instance, we could be linking Perl Foundation from other sites. There's opportunities to promote Perl Foundation, maybe the grants function. Why is there not a consistent logo style brand association? Even the colors, there's lots of shades of blue. There's lots of other sites as well that are not in this study. This was a reasonably short-term study. Questions around how do you work out what sites are official and what are not official, logo, branding, messaging. So having those consistent certainly would help with that. And then tutorial sites would help promote Perl Foundation, of course, Perl and other things. A more thorough study is required, but what I wanted to do was to open up this conversation with some highlights. We don't need to fix everything, but we do need a strategy. So that was a very quick whiz through. You'll have access to those slides to look through later if you want to pick through it. But what I want to get to is what does that say to all of you looking at it from the outside rather than probably the areas that you normally look at. If you look at CPAN every day, you may not consider CPAN in the context of all of these other sites and our overall brand image. Do we want to change it? Is everyone comfortable? Well, that's absolutely fine. We need to keep it as it is for various reasons, or do we accept that we probably do want to change it to make it more accessible for other people, to create more consistency and increase our brand quality? And if we do want to change it, what do we choose to do? I'd like to work with the marketing committee now. It'd be good for anyone who wants to join the marketing committee. There's lots of work to be done, so people can get involved. That could be technical, helping with some of the style sheets, helping with the strategy. It could be helping spreading messages, writing blogs. There's lots of things we can do. But really, we need to think about this brand. Today's about brand and messaging. That very quick tour shows us we have lots of brands, lots of messages. I'm keen to find out what people's views are about how you want to change it, and how we might go about it. What is our strategy? So not solving it all now, but at least coming up with a strategy and coming up with some next steps. So open to questions and discussions. If people can raise their hands, and let's have your thoughts. Let's start with Abigail. Oh, you're muted there, Abigail. Thank you.
In the 20 years or so that I'm going to YAPSIs, this is, I think, the fourth marketing workshop I've been to, and I certainly have missed a couple. And we're still trying to solve the same problems that we were facing 15 years ago, and trying to solve that. What was the outcome? What did we do after the previous workshops, which apparently didn't work? Did we take any notes? Did we do any retrospective? Well, we did this, and this was the outcome. If we don't do that, then in 2 years we are probably having the same workshop again, still trying to solve the same problems.
So I think these are the same problems as before. I think that's right. I wasn't in those previous workshops, so I can't comment on what happened or didn't happen. That isn't a reason not to do this one. But what we need to do is learn those lessons and work out, again, the final slide, what is it we're going to choose to do now? I think having a workshop now isn't going to solve marketing. What I'm looking for is a strategy. I'm looking for input. We need to know, for instance, would the various different communities welcome Perl Foundation saying, here's a style sheet. Do you want to use that? If the first thing we do is say, here's a style sheet, here's a logo, why don't you use this? And the response is, we're not going to use that. We like our font, we like our logo, we're not going to play. Then what we do is we get in our own way of solving this problem. So I don't want to be busy trying to push this message out, just finding that it's not what people want.
I can answer you with that, Stuart. Actually, I can answer that.
The workshop is to get buy-in, find out, are people on board with this? If so, the marketing team then will feel empowered to start investing in doing some of these things. And that's what I'm hoping to get from this: a strategy, people feel empowered, knowing that people are receptive, they want to solve these problems. If the community comes back collectively and says, we don't want to solve these problems, let's not keep talking about it. This is a good chance to share those views. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, sorry about that, Stuart. I said I can answer your question about what was done previously. Last time I was in the push with that. It was with JJ, who I know you work with. JJ designed a consistent style for the entire of the Perl sites, and then we worked together and we designed a toolbar that was to go on every site that linked to all the other pages, at which point every site would have this consistent floating toolbar that was at the bottom of the page and would bring up the right web pages. And JJ worked quite hard at designing consistent style. So the Perl Foundation redesign was done by him. But we had significant pushback from many other sites that didn't want to adopt it. I mean, it was adopted by some sites. So Perl.com, Perl.org, eventually they came along and adopted broadly the same style, but it was pushed back from the others. I now think that style does need a revamp, and I think Perl.com, if I'm right, has got the better style now. Yeah. And maybe we should move towards that, but that's what happened. Perl Monks specifically pushed back, and we got pushed back from some of the other sites as well.
Okay, so that sounds like would potentially to respond to Abigail's point there, possibly one of the things were that efforts were tried and there was pushback. So again, we need to talk about what that means, whether the community says don't do these things, or whether there is an appetite to make changes and become have a consistent brand. My view, my guidance is we should have a set of resources with a common brand. It doesn't mean they have to look the same. That's not what I'm saying. A comment earlier in one of the conversations I had was somewhere like Apache Foundation have a commonality about them, and yet that a lot of the projects are very independent. They have their own branding, but they have commonality, so they link back to Apache Foundation. As an idea, I'm not promoting that as an answer. I'm just saying that other organizations have found different ways of doing it. We need to find out what we're going to do. We need to get rough consensus, or at least know that people aren't going to get in the way of it, and then we can start getting on with that. But we need to know what the community think. Tux.
I've got one thing for the issues you mentioned. The logo.
Sorry, your microphone is cutting out. You're hard to hear there.
Better?
You're very quiet still. Nope. I've lost you altogether there. I think what we'll do, unless do you want to just try one more time?
Better?
You're quiet, but let's give it a go. Let's try.
Okay. The logo has a history.
Yes.
And the camel was brandmarked by O'Reilly. And O'Reilly did not allow us to use the camel on any website that they did not allow us to use it on. So that was where the onion came from and other things. So the first thing logo-wise would be to contact O'Reilly and say, do you still have the need to brandmark the camel as O'Reilly? Or you should say, well, drop the camel altogether and go to the onion and leave it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Those are the two choices, is either we have freedom to use the camel as we wish, or we need something that we have got freedom to use. So Nick, I see you're making notes there. So if you can pick that up as an action of one of those two things, and then we'll have clarity. And I think if there's any, unless there's any objections, if everyone agrees that O'Reilly, if they don't give us freedom to use the camel, we can't use it, then maybe we go with that. But I'll be interested to see the comments on that. Thank you. Andy Lester.
What are we trying to do here? What are our goals?
Perfect.
I mean,
yes.
So far, everything I've heard about is talking about having visual consistency across the websites. Is that the goal? Is that why we're having this meeting? Because if it is, then I don't need to be here. Yeah. But what's the point of the Perl Foundation website? How do we know it's successful? What's the point of Perl.org? What do we want these websites to do? If we don't have that defined, then all the rebranding in the world doesn't matter, because we don't know if we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Goals, absolutely right. So there is background that led to this point. So this isn't all about trying to drive a marketing agenda. This is a reaction to a larger challenge, and the larger challenge is that there's a lot of negativity around the perception of Perl, and that's one of the key issues. And I think it's hard, without getting a feeling that things are progressing, without it's otherwise just talk. We need to change the perception of Perl, but we don't want to just keep talking about what we're going to do. At least if we can start working together proactively, it gives us the opportunity to start thinking bigger and start thinking about other shared goals. But the comment was made earlier, conversations have happened in the past, and the perception is, well, nothing has changed. I'd like to be thinking a lot bigger and taking a far greater step. But I just think that will be beyond certainly my term and my role. It is not something that I'll be able to deliver in a reasonable period of time. And it may well need too many conversations to get us anywhere. If we can achieve a step forward by bringing some consistency, that itself will bring out a lot of other conversations. I see that as a tactical step. Being able to achieve that, I think we then have a much better chance of taking larger strides. And back to what you say, what's our objective? I mean, I'd like to see Perl where it should be. But we all know, if you talk to your fellow developers outside this circle, we all know what the perception is. We just need to crack that, feel better about it, feel more confident, and then we can start off with some other aspects of this. This is just one piece of a jigsaw. Okay,
so right now, basically what we're talking about in this meeting is visual consistency across the websites.
The tactical point at this point is around bringing a consistent brand. It doesn't mean making them look the same.
That's fine. That's fine. Then I won't ask the larger questions.
Okay, but if you have larger questions and if they're on your mind and you want to talk about those, absolutely, I invite you to come and contact me after this meeting or outside of it, and I'm very interested to hear those.
Okay.
Okay. Christopher White.
Well, there were Mike and Nigel are ahead of me.
Oh, okay. I just the list. You're at the top of the list at the minute, but
No worries.
It'll be easier if we go to you, Christopher, actually, because if I can just go in order of what's on my screen, it'll be easier than trying to guess the order.
Okay. What I would like from the marketing committee or Larry or somebody is the message is to know what we want people to think about Perl. So my request for the marketing committee is if you could let me know what you're thinking in terms of the perception we want to create in people's minds about Perl. That would be very helpful to me in understanding specific proposals about what we want to do tactically. And I realize maybe that's a big question, and so I can take it, I can table it, but that's what I want to know is what do you want to tell people? What's the message?
Yeah, and we need to find a form of words that are agreed between the team. It will be along the lines of quality, professional. It will be that kind of thing. But yes, we need to come together with a brief in order to get the to get the look that supports that. I will say that a lot of this work has been done, and I think it was pointed out before. These conversations have happened. When you get into the detail of it, there are a lot of things that are the work in the language, the graphics. There's a lot done already. We just need to get to the point where we can do something with it. And really, what I don't want to find is that the work's done, but there's just no appetite to execute it. I need to make sure that we've had the conversation that allows us to do something with that. But I take your point. The marketing committee should crystallize that set of words, publish them, and so we can then work to that. I think that will be a very useful outcome.
Thank you.
Mike.
I assume you mean me. So
sorry, yes, Mike.
Yeah.
Stemley.
Very common name. Yeah. So I guess there are kind of three things with regard to what Andy was saying with consistency, right? Since you found resistance with some of the official messaging and style guides and all that, perhaps something as simple as this is a Perl community website, very similar to what like the home brewers and the brewers associations do, right? With the logos on the side of the 6-pack, where hey, these guys are part of our community, but they're not us, right? So then you could end up with a primary official branding, secondary community branding, and then some sort of index where you list those things, right? That way the community actually has a place to go to find all that stuff. Because as you pointed out, if somebody goes and does Google searches, they get 2 pages of Google results on is Perl dead and why did Perl die and why is everybody else doing something else, and it's the read-only language or the write-only language, like all sorts of nonsense out there. That's what you see first. Having some sort of index that could make it more clear what the priorities of the community are and where the good first places for people to go if they're not familiar with the community are. And then, focusing on things like SEO, focusing on getting those as being the entry points, making sure that all the sites that are official or, hopefully also community link back to the index or whatever everybody thinks is the best landing page for all of that. That seems like it would be a more achievable thing than trying to get everybody to focus on a style guide. Because I think the biggest problem we need to solve there is that when somebody goes to look for Perl, they're either getting a website that tells them absolutely nothing of value, or they're getting an article that's explaining, stuff that we probably disagree with and is irrelevant and is probably 15 years old anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing there, taking control of the narrative is very important, and that's something we need to do through SEO and through making sure that the right sites are linked to. One of the initiatives that we have, I mentioned in in the session earlier today, is a recognised resources initiative, and that is basically as you've described, where the Perl Foundation will be recognising, officially recognising resources. I say resources, it's quite a loose term. It could well be news sites, it could be websites, information sites, but things that the Perl Foundation is saying, we recognise this as an official source of information, and that it conforms to our standards of quality and professionalism, brand, and so on. So that's our recognised resources programme through Perl Foundation. And yes, that could have a stamp on it. With the FOSDEM work that we did, I could possibly show you some of the pictures there. We created a couple of banners and they had a Perl Foundation stamp on them because we were trying that out earlier this year. So there was a Perl and a Raku banner, both of the Perl Foundation supported stamp on them. And that seemed to be very well received. So we've experimented a bit, but again, this is about getting the buy-in and making sure people are on board with this and have a chance to share concerns. So I think that might address some of that. Mark, would you like to add something?
Yeah, it's going along with what you just said about the stamp and the approval, and I kind of like the comment from Mike about the idea that there needs to be some way of identification or an index. What I wanted to add to that is, if we, the problem we had last time, as I said, was getting people to adopt a style. If we produce, say, a style guide to go with maybe a new logo, which seems to be one of the favored options, we could insist that the style guide is followed. Therefore, they can make the site their own, but there's a consistency of look in terms of colors, in terms of maybe font, and certainly in terms of logo, and also that they must link to, say, the other places like Perl.com, Perl.org, Perl Foundation, as part of us then approving their site and having that. So it's a dual narrative. We then get a consistency across all the different sites and a way of somebody new knowing that this site follows the guide and follows the way that we do in the Perl world. Yeah,
I think that's defining the set of rules that one must adhere to maintain that stamp of recognised or approved, whatever the wording we use is, would work very well. And then that isn't about the technical detail, as you talked about before, Mark, of having everyone using the same toolbar, which has technical implications. It's more about maintaining a level of quality and standards. And if you're using the logo, you use it in the right ways, that kind of thing. Even if you use the Perl or the Onion, you're using it in the right ways. So yeah, I think that's possibly the way we would be going. That sounds very good. Nigel Hamilton.
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, so look, I think Mike and Mark have both made really good points actually about the kind of the SEO conduit that people will come through, and then basically the authority that we can pass to each other, which was part of, the Google PageRank thing, that, the authority of sites pass from one site to the next. And I suppose the TPF is kind of the origin of where the IP in Perl lies. So in some respects, it is the foundation of those other sites. So, I think it's a good idea that some of the trademark licensing could include, requirements about how if you want to show your association with the TPF, then you need to, do certain things. And they shouldn't be too onerous. They should be a fairly low barrier to entry, but there should be some, stipulation there so that there is the consistency that you're talking about. But I also think that there's definitely got to be the space for sub-projects to be able to express their own brand personality. And you see that really clearly in the Apache Foundation. They've got lots of different sub-projects that completely have their own personality, their own sub-community, their own culture. And I think there's no way that we can kind of control from the center how that will go. And we shouldn't. We should actually let everything flourish, because we're not in a position where we can kind of be fussy here. In my talk, lightning talk earlier this week on SEO and what's happening with Raku and Perl, we're on page 6 and Raku is not even in the results. So there's an existential problem here. So I think we really need to make sure that the pathways to Perl, the pathways to Raku are clear, and that they start, and this is what we can do as a marketing group, we can break down the audiences of, okay, well, who is the audience for Perl? Well, there's new programmers, there's existing programmers, There's managers who are considering potentially a proposal for a new site written in Perl. They're going to do a little bit of research. Well, is this a good language? Am I going to put some budget into this? We need to have an answer for all those different user groups. And I think there hasn't been a strategy. There clearly hasn't been a strategy in the past. And we can be quite methodical about that. We can say, right, what are we doing for the novice Perl user? What are the messages that person needs to get, and how will we effectively support them? And then we can do it for all the different audience groups that you can think of that might be interested in coming to Perl. And as for the O'Reilly trademark thing, I think we should, logo rather, we should definitely make sure that we're not encumbered there at all, that we can just move freely with that. Because the last thing we want to do is be involved in some sort of restricted legal spat there. We want to just make progress now. Frankly, we can't afford the aggro. So that'd be my take.
Thank you very much. And what I'd like to do, so we have people here from the marketing committee. We also have the board now have a monthly meeting. We've had a monthly meeting since September last year. What I'd like to do here is I'd like to invite the marketing committee to come up with a proposal from this. For me, this is stimulating this conversation, but once it gets started, it's the marketing team's job to deliver it and to bring a proposal to the board. So hopefully within, I think it's 3 weeks to the next board meeting possibly. So either that meeting or the next one, but hopefully that one, we have a proposal which covers some of these items. And then we can look at how we execute them and how we make them happen. From a budgetary point of view, that's not going to be the limiting factor. It's more about, can we come up with the strategy and the plan? And this is an opportunity for people to speak out and say, no, don't do that. I'm not interested in the Perl Foundation stamp, or I am, or the brand consistency. So more questions. We have Diab. Do I have that correct?
Close enough. It's Diab.
Diab.
So one of the questions you asked is, what is it that you'd like? And I've been using Perl since I think 1993. And one of the things that has become increasingly problematic is a central place that I can send people to for information. I if I'm keeping up with what's going on in the Perl world, I have to look at recent on MetaCPAN, blogs.perl.org, which I really don't want to put information on there because it's such a creaky site. Perl.com, which may or may not be there. I don't know what their long-term plan is. There is no place for stories about, interesting uses of Perl in the workplace. There's no dynamic content which really defines how active the community is, and also a place where I can send someone to say, here, you want to find something cool about what to use or what to do, here's a place to go. And I know that there have been several grant programs to get blogs.perl.org back up and running, and they haven't panned out for various reasons. And I know there are a number of people who would probably not want to set up their own blogging spot just to blog on Perl, but would like a centralized region. So as a user and as trying to get people, I'm in a field, astrophysics, which has seen a dramatic decline in the use of Perl. It's really hard for me to get anyone excited because I can't show them anything. And it's just dribs and drabs everywhere, and it's not coordinated.
Okay, thank you. So signposting it sounds like signposting maybe is the most critical point here. Where can you point someone out where they will have a reasonable chance of understanding the Perl landscape as a whole, and then work through it? So that sounds like a number one primary challenge, is that initial signpost. But then following that, what should that cover? Because if we have a flat hierarchy, that will just be an index of 200 links to other sites. So we possibly need to work out how we then group resources. So I think it would be good input to the marketing team for people to say this should be in and this should be out. And maybe this is something can go through the chat or through Slack afterwards to explore what resources need to be in that initial signposting. When you point someone towards Perl, what do you want them to find? And maybe there's different types of people. Maybe there are Maybe it's the FD in your business who's going to fund the next project, and you need to give them confidence that Perl is a safe bet. It might be the developer, a junior developer who's getting involved, or a marketing person. There might be different people. So we need to consider what those the types of people are who you might point to Perl, and what it is you think they need to be presented with, or what they need to discover to give them comfort to answer their question, to solve the problem that they're coming with. So do provide suggestions of what does need to be in there in that initial signposting for what kind of audience, and what doesn't need to be in there, because that might help us consider who the first resources are that we need to start marking and bringing up to scratch and include in the signposting activities. So the next question, Richard Ainsworth, please.
Thanks. I've been using Perl for since the 90s, and I've not been in the English speaking world for a while, so I was always looking in from the outside. This is the first time I've come to a Perl conference. But what I tend to do is I look on things like Ars Technica, I look at various websites for news, because I'm not purely focused on Perl. I'm interested in other aspects of technical life. The problem I have found is that there is a mismatch between what is reported and what I know to be true, and it seems that I'm interested to know whether the Perl Foundation has got an outreach, an active outreach to journalists. I think that when I was in my professional life, I had to have a relationship with journalists because there were stories that would come that I would have to react to. And if you go to a journalist when something is wrong, or when you're reacting to something bad, it doesn't work. What you have to do is to build a relationship with a group of journalists when there is nothing wrong, and you're taking them out for coffee or dinner or whatever without a problem, so that when you do have a problem, you can ring them up and say, can we have a coffee and let's discuss this, and there's already a groundwork. In other words, there's an ongoing thing, because the news that I see about Perl tends to be negative. And if there's negative things that are coming about Perl, there's not positive ones, then naturally when you start searching for Perl, you get negative feedback. The other thing is, when people start saying that they want to have a style manual and they want to enforce that manual on other people, I'm one of those contrarians who's saying, well, I don't want to do that. Why are you coming on to me? But if you have control over one or two sites centrally, that you create your own brand, and then you say to the community, if you link into this site, we're going to go up in the SEE rankings, and therefore positive things about Perl, which you would like, will go up. You will I'm pretty certain that the Perl community would react positively and link in for the purpose of generating a higher SEO, for the purpose of getting better news, which will reflect on them. And so, I think this is, you can start centrally, get community buy-in, and if the community actually likes the style that you are projecting, then they're going to take elements of that for themselves anyway. So the style will evolve, will spread outwards rather than you trying to forcibly imposing it on everybody else. So I have these two things. First of all, creating a strong central place, which is what several other people have already said. And the other one is the active outreach to journalists to generate information that is good about Perl. So for example, this conference created the news that came up on my screens about Perl 7 and how it was the next stage for further. And there was a little bit about Raku. So that created positive feedback. But, you could have flooded, if you'd had a number of different journalists who were interested in Perl, you could easily have, flooded all of these platforms that look at tech sites. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you for those two very good points. For the Perl 7 announcement, we identified, I think, 10 media outlets on the outside of the Perl network, because of course, you know, we know internally where to send that to, but we targeted about 10 on the outside, and a couple of them picked up. Now, I don't think we necessarily expected everybody to respond to our press release on the basis that, as you've just pointed out, we don't have those relationships, but we know that at least a couple of those outlets did react once they'd seen the talk and realized the announcement was there and that the general feedback was quite positive. They then published extracts of the press release plus extracts from the talk and other things. So we've started on that, but it was tactical, and accept what you're saying, because we didn't have a strategy and we don't have those relationships. It was tactical, but we've started, and now we've got that base. We need to do more of that. So I completely agree. We need a relationship that is ongoing so that we can use that when we need it. Yeah, so I think that two very good points there. Regarding us imposing a style, I think that may well be right. And I think for us to, like Google, if you want to be in Google, you have to do certain things. You have to have a website of a certain speed, of a certain style to rank better. It's that kind of thing. It encourages people to be better if they know that they'll be included in the recognized resources in the signposting. So yeah, very good. Thank you. I have Mike with your hand up. I'm not sure if that was up from previously or whether you've raised your hand again.
I raised it again, but if there are other people who haven't spoken yet, I will yield until they have spoken.
No, you're next in the list, so please go on.
All right. So out of the conversation we had before, I share this, the previous speaker's concern. I do not think that we should. I do not think that we should use IP rules in order to push people to comply, unless it's super egregious. Like if a naughty website starts putting a Perl logo on it, we should probably cease and desist on that one. But I think that giving folks the incentives is a good idea. I think we need to identify some projects that would be good lightning rods, because there's definitely an awful lot of old stuff, right? We've got people on this channel, on this call right now, who've been using Perl for 30 plus years. That's a big deal, but it also means that a lot of the stuff is going to be abandoned. So lightning rods, things like Mojolicious, where there's a lot of excitement around them. I'm blanking on other projects to pull up there, but I know that the WebAssembly stuff, Platypus, there's a lot of really good stuff that's kind of unique to Perl, where Perl either was the first to do it or is still the best to do it. We could highlight some of that stuff. The other thing is, a lot of times folks are surprised to learn that websites are Perl shops. I think it'd be an interesting thing to do if we could get some sort of agreement with shops that we know are Perl shops, and build a catalog similar to what you'd get if you went to Salesforce. They've got all they actually call them logos. They've got the logo collection that that are of all the customers that use Salesforce. That's a powerful marketing tool, but also it makes it so that when people say Perl is irrelevant or Perl does not exist in a way that's meaningful anymore, there's the list of Perl shops out there. If you're looking for jobs, here's a list of Perl shops. I think it's important to more normalize things and come more into the fold where we're all talking about one another, rather than trying to just speak with one voice. Because I'm not entirely sure that speaking with one voice is achievable. So we're going to have to find tiers of that, where the Perl Foundation and the official Perl community is speaking with one voice. Then there's the community stuff, and then there's the business community that is also using Perl, and then highlighting specific projects that are not necessarily affiliated with Perl, but are nonetheless exciting. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So we have a challenge there with organizing and stimulating all of the different activities, but those are the challenges we have, and that's the problems we've got to solve. So very interested in feedback, input, your views on who these people might be. We have a separate committee, which is the fundraising committee, and as a separate thread, they've been working through contacting people who have been involved with Perl and in the past and currently from a sponsorship perspective. So we do have quite a long list of people already, which we need to manage first from a sponsorship perspective and fundraising. But actually through those conversations and part of the value add to offer them additional visibility on the website to be listed as a supporter, I think has a kind of win-win benefit.
Which kind of makes me wonder if we should have a separate committee that engages them for marketing purposes, as that kind of seems like a conflict of interest.
Well,
yeah.
and again, these are the conversations we need to have, because on one hand, it could be a value add to say, if we can feature you through our marketing committee, so we'll take your sponsor money and we'd like to feature you as well, which may be a benefit, but again, other people might see that as a conflict. I know we've got a couple of our fundraisers potentially on this call, so it may well be that they want to add some views. Alex, you've popped your hand up, so let's briefly go to you on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've just started with the fundraising committee, and I really just started to contact people and say, we'd like you to sponsor. We'd like you to sponsor the organization. But, you know, I'm doing everything I can not to talk about money instead of talk about support, which is financial. And it can be a bit of a delicate balancing act where you're talking about sponsorship and then saying, oh, and, you know, if you have any jobs to offer people. So anyway, I'll have another report in a year's time when I've got more experience in this department.
All right, thank you. And it is important for us to be joining up these different approaches. Initially, I think we need to keep this as a marketing activity, but we need to link it up, and it may well be that the guys on the fundraising can input, here's a list of people to talk to, and vice versa. Okay, so thank you for that. Matthew Persico.
Oh, Jesus. Am I on? I'm on. Okay.
You're on.
There's been a lot of ideas bandied about today with marketing and message and whatever. And this may not be the forum for the actual presentation, but Perl.org really I know it's been overhauled recently, but you look at it and it just doesn't, I don't know. I don't remember when it was rebranded or reworked at, but I don't think that Perl.org, I mean, I'm looking at it, and I just wanted to make the point that we don't need to push a style out on everyone that wants to use Perl websites. But I think our own website really needs to rethink what it looks. We've got, you know, Perl.org, and then we got Perl.pl, someplace for Perl.doc.pl. And to me, the most important thing is when I type in Perl.org, it's got to be right there in your face. And the other thing we got to fix is we got to fix blogs, because we need some place where people can write and we can find everything they write. Those are the two things that are most important to me. Okay. And I hate to do it, but go look at python.org.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dead smack in the middle. About, download, community, document, support, right across. No bars at the top, no blocks in the middle. It's just right. So while we think about the message we want to put on the page, I think we also need a parallel track where we do something about the page.
Yeah, I agree. So the feeling from this conversation that I have so far, taking on board what you've just said there, is that we need to be going at this from the perspective of Perl Foundation, recognizing certain key features. I think that's the way forward, and then people would adhere to a certain standard, and then support and encourage people who have the different sites, some of the ones that I presented earlier, and help them make some of these changes and give them the support to do it. But I think the Perl Foundation isn't going to then isn't going to require a certain style. It's going to say, you need to meet a certain set of characteristics, a certain set of criteria, and we will help and support you improve your own sites and your own marketing. And then we can have that balance between that distribution of lots of good looking sites working together with that autonomy as well. I get the feeling that's the way we need to go forward from this, and that then my guidance to the marketing team is that is what we enable. I just need to know we've got the support of people here, and I don't see that anyone's saying don't do that, which is good because it then empowers the marketing team to do this and not come back to me and say that we've got barriers and we're not getting anywhere.
I think the most important thing with other sites is just the most important thing they can do is link back to Perl.org, blogs.org if we fix it, and TPF.
Yeah.
And what's the Raku site? Raku's got its own site, right?
Yeah.
You know, the 4 of those things. Before we say you got to use this style, just link back to us. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing we can put in our criteria. If you are a recognized site, you must link back to the following, and we just need to work out what that short list is. So Richard next, please. And we're short of time, so if you can be reasonably concise, that would be good.
I actually don't think very much about branding. I dislike branding. I think you should change it every couple of years anyway. But I have looked at the sites, and since I've had to do a site of my own for something else, I've been looking around, and the Perl sites are a bit old-fashioned. You know, if they're nice, there should be at least one site that is, optimized for a mobile and responsive. And you know, some of the sites that I go on to, I can't look at them on a mobile. So you know, get some of the central core sites right. Oh, what I wanted to say was, Damien said the other day, he said one of the virtues of Perl is envy. He said it's the 0th one, and that Perl tends to steal everything from everybody else. Well, why don't we go ahead and steal from everybody else in terms of marketing?
Yes, why not? Absolutely right. Thank you. Okay, next we'll have Patrick, please.
Right. Can I be heard?
You're very quiet. We can hear you, but you're very quiet.
Oh, I'm very quiet. Try to talk a bit louder. Okay.
Let's see how we get on.
Okay. I got the impression that you think there's a strong link between someone sponsoring you and we willing to put them on our website.
I'm not suggesting there is a strong link. I'm saying there's potentially an opportunity to explore that. It may work. I don't know. But I'm interested to your feedback.
Yeah, but I think having a list of people using Perl is a very strong marketing instrument. And it would be a pity to limit ourselves in putting companies on there by saying, okay, we're only putting companies on there that sponsor us. So I think make the list as big as possible and put the biggest companies at the top, and the more the better. That's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very valuable. I think that's a very good point. We need to consider not just sponsors, but all the users. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Nigel Hamilton.
Yeah, hi. So you could do like powered by Perl. It could be a strapline that various sites could have on them. Something like that, just basically associating back to Perl or Raku, whichever the technology is there. But I think the important thing is that matching between the audience and the message, and having that quantifiable, and also having it something that is continually improving, so that we need to be able to, see it improving over time. So we need some way of, recording incoming search hits, etc., so we can actually see the marketing campaigns working. So there's a feedback loop between, what people are finding, where they're going, and we're actually seeing it succeed. Because we're going to need to be able to pivot and change things and effectively respond to, hopefully it's working. Hopefully the marketing campaign starts to pick up momentum. So we want to feel the momentum and then kind of understand it, learn from it, improve upon it. So there's this feedback loop which we need to install as well. So that would just be another point that I'd like to make.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So there is another initiative. There's a lot of them, as you keep hearing me talking about another initiative. There is a bunch of them going on. One of them is around systems, tools, infrastructure. that may well help look at some of the things like tracking and log analysis, which interestingly most log analysis tools that you can find I think are still generally based on Perl. So we've got just about 2 minutes left, so I'll take one more question. That is Lembark will be the last question. Lembark, do you want to? You're muted. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you. Thank you.
Abigail pointed this out up front. We keep doing this. I've heard about buzz. I've heard about marketing. Until the Perl community itself decides that we want to market, not just a few people here, but on average, the Python people, if you don't use Python for something, they freak. That's one of the reasons a lot of places use Python. It may not be any better, but if you don't use Python, the Python people freak. My point would be, until we are willing to market to ourselves, and the average Perl hacker says, hey, I feel like checking out Perl.org this week, until people say, gee, I'm willing to spend the time keeping Perl.org or the blogs or whatever up to date enough that they don't. I mean, there was stuff last year on Perl.org that was from 1990s. You know, there was a picture of Larry Wall being interviewed that was a decade old. Unless either the Perl Foundation is willing to pay, and we're willing to pay them to do it, pay somebody to maintain the bloody site and keep it up to date and put interesting things on it and keep it looking as if someone's working on it, all the rest of this is a waste of time. So I think we're marketing to the wrong people. We shouldn't be marketing to all the people that are looking at Perl. We should be marketing to the Perl community, getting enough people convinced that it's actually worth doing this so that we don't come up with these pretty good ideas, and a year from now we're going to have the same discussion because everyone's forgotten them. Yeah, that's what's happened every bloody time before this.
So point taken, and I think the first thing needs to happen is that we need to take the lead and show that things are happening. I think that will help people in the community get behind that and realize that it's worth them spending their efforts. But we need to start, Perl Foundation needs to start leading this, and then through that leadership, I'm sure other people will find that they're empowered to do things, and we can measure it in a year. You know, I can't give you a guarantee in a year things will be different, but I can guarantee that I'll try. And with the right support and with the right efforts, we've got a good chance of making things better. So we're going to have to wrap up in just a moment. So sorry for anyone else who didn't get the question asked. I will ask everyone to please share your thoughts. Take responsibility to share these thoughts you've got with the marketing team. Just because you know that that's what needs to happen, it doesn't mean the team do. It doesn't mean it's the top priority. So we need you to be sharing your thoughts, getting in touch. Be part of the conversation, join the team. If there's things that you can do, if you know what that, you can help develop the criteria. And one of the criteria may be if your site becomes stale or not up to date, you lose that badge of recognized resource. These are the kind of things, it's really good input, but we need you to get engaged collectively. Let's have your thoughts, support us when we make changes, and let's see if we can, in a year's time, have this conversation and look back and reflect that things have changed. That's what I hope for, and I'll work towards that. I need everyone else to get behind that. So I think we're out of time. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in and for your input.